right, friends. Hey, well, welcome back. We are in our series on 1 Timothy with my good friend, Dave Bruskas, who just had a very big birthday.
I did. A big one.
That's a big one.
The big 6-0.
6-0, man.
Yeah.
You're looking so good.
Oh, well, that's kind.
Brother.
My brother texted me my first day after 60. He said, just so you know, you're closer to 100 now than you are to 20. I said, thank you, brother.
Thanks.
Love you too.
Those are facts. I bring up your age not to, boy, this culture has such a fascination with youth, more to highlight really, Dave, just kind of your wisdom. And so it's been really fun to because of your varied experiences. A lot of times people will come to me, they're stuck on something kind of ministry related. And I go, you know what? I've got an idea, but let's get Dave, let's get Dave at the table. Let's get Dave on the phone. Let's get Dave on a Zoom call. And just to hear your reflections on, a life of ministry, it benefited me personally. We talked last time about how they benefited those young leaders. And so we're going to today talk about the passage. Actually, I heard you share with those young leaders. And so 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 7. And so, I just said, Dave, just pick up some section of the pastoral epistles and just talk to these young leaders. And you got up in front of a whiteboard. We don't have a whiteboard. We've got, I don't know what this background is. It's
pretty cool. Whatever that is.
Topographical map. So we'll go hike somewhere afterwards.
Nice.
But you don't have a whiteboard, but just, kind of in that same vein, imagine you're talking to some leaders, some younger leaders, some older leaders, and older leaders, I think sometimes we get so complicated we don't go back to some of the basics. I think this would be, I think if I was 60, if I was 70, there's so much that you're going to share here today that would be applicable. So what if I just kind of step back on this one and give, at least initially, and give you some more elbow room and just let you just kind of share your reflections on this passage here.
Great. How about I read it? Then we'll jump right in. So 1 Timothy 1, 3 through 7. As I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine, nor to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which promote speculations rather than the stewardship from God that is by faith. Verse 5, the aim of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Certain persons, by swerving from these, have wandered away into vain discussions, desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make confident assertions. So I think, John, if we peel back a little bit, we take a bigger view of what's happening here. Last time we talked about salutations, very typical in Paul's letters, and then we move right into the issue at hand. And I think that's what's being previewed here. So Timothy's being told to stay at Ephesus. There's a doctrinal situation going on there. This was often the case when Paul would plant churches. He would go, he'd get them started. As soon as he would leave, false teachers would come right on his heels. They would infiltrate the church. And so apparently in Ephesus, it's so bad that he's had to send somebody back from his apostolic entourage, Timothy, to clean it up. But I think what's so important here, and I think this is what, when I went through my own crisis of understanding pastoral ministry, that really grabbed my attention more than anything else, is verse 5, because this is a huge statement. Paul saying to Timothy, the aim of our charge, our shared charge. Timothy, at the end of the day, we will know that we did our job if these things are true. The aim of our charge is love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. In other words, love is the byproduct of something else. Yeah. And there's this trifold thing that Paul mentions of a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. And so as we unfold and unpack this letter further, and we get a glimpse of it here in this first chapter, is Paul's going to tell Timothy over and over and over to preach good doctrine. He even uses the I know we weren't going to show off too much Greek, but he was even going to use, he uses the language hygienic. Like there's only two types of doctrine. There's hygienic or clean doctrine, then there's unclean. And so the essence of clean doctrine is everything to do with the gospel. It's all about, we have this relationship with God based upon who Jesus is and what he did on our behalf. And so if you think of it that way, if we want to take a step back, what Paul is telling Timothy, and he's going to tell him, preach the gospel. As people receive the gospel and they believe by faith, there's this inner transformation that happens. All of a sudden, what once was an impure heart becomes pure. A guilty conscience becomes a good conscience. What were dead religious works become a sincere faith. And the result of that is we love one another. So when I look at this, here's the big takeaway I have is everywhere you look in the New Testament, the proof of your faith, the evidence of my faith is that we love one another. It's that what happens when we trust in the gospel is we receive this love. It's actually God's love for God and his people that we receive. It's a love that's alien to us. It doesn't live within us. It's not intrinsic. It's external, but we receive it through the Holy Spirit, and then it overflows from our lives and the lives of others. So it's almost as if Paul's at the base of a stream coming down a mountain. The water's impure, it's dirty water, and he says, hey, we got to get back up to we got to get back to the headwaters. We need to preach the gospel, and as we preach the gospel and people receive the gospel by faith, they'll be transformed internally from within. Their inner life will be changed, and the output of their lives will be they love one another. So first thought I have is we think about what does this mean for pastoral ministry? This is it. This is the litmus test. This is the metric. But it's the biggest problem in ministry is how do you measure that? How do you really measure? I think most of us can have a subjective sense of the people that I serve are loving one another, but that's the test here. So imagine being told that, hey, John, I want you to stay in Ephesus until everyone loves one another. No, go. Do what you got to do. It's a little bit overwhelming.
You pick out your grave plot because you're not going anywhere. Yeah, well, we'll come back to that, that thought. But
sure.
Yeah.
So that's, that's to me is the biggest idea here. And what caught me when I was going through these really for the first time, these being the pastoral epistles, with the thought of what implications do these texts have on pastoral ministry? That was the first thing I realized is, oh no, I'm looking at the wrong metrics. I'm not evaluating the aim of my charge. I'm looking at budgets, and I'm looking at attendance, and I'm looking at the excellence of services and how well are we doing with internal ministries. And I'm not really looking around to try to evaluate, do the people I'm called to serve actually love one another? Yes. Are they practically, actively in each other's lives? Are they caring for one another? Are they encouraging one another? Are they meeting the most basic needs that we have to meet? Or are they just showing up for some religious goods and services once or twice a week?
Oh, that's such a damning phrase, religious goods and services. Yeah. That's how do we measure discipleship? Jesus was pretty clear. I mean, last meal he had, he told the guys, hey, we're going to net this thing out. The way people will know whether you really follow me or not is the way you love each other, And so that is the litmus test. That should be the center of the bullseye. Dave, tell me, so if the goal of our instruction is love, these things will happen downstream. What is the opposite of love? Like
that's such a good question.
What sometimes is at the headwaters there?
Yeah. And that's what I think Paul begins to tease out. He's pretty anonymous because he calls them certain persons twice. So it's clear he has very specific people in mind. But
there's some people in this church, and then you're like, know exactly what I'm talking
about. I'm not going to use names here. Certain persons exactly is what he's doing. But here's two things we see in them. They're devoting themselves to myths and endless genealogies, which is speculative. These false teachers are all about speculative theology, and Paul contrasts that with this treasure that we're supposed to steward, namely the gospel. The gospel is a treasure that God has given us, even as Christian leaders, to steward well as it relates to others. So why would you not steward well this treasure you have and go off into speculation? So they were speculative, and then as we pick up in verses 6 and 7, they're wrongly teaching the law. And that's what followed Paul. People would come back, they would see this new community of faith, and what they would teach them is, hey, Jesus is a good start, but you need to do more. You need to go back to the Old Testament law. You need to practice the dietary laws. You need to practice all the laws so that at the end of the day, you'll be justified. So the misuse of the law is the real issue here, because they were teaching that you and I can be justified according to our own efforts in keeping the law, right? When we think of legalism, John, there's two types. Most of us are more familiar with adding rules to the Bible doesn't have. Like, that's what you say when you say to your buddy, hey, man, I think you're being a little bit legalistic and calling me out that I shouldn't eat this steak tonight, right? But the legalism that we really see, that
which I've never said, by the way.
You've never said, no, and I would never say to you. You and I have a very grace-based relationship. But the legalism the Bible speaks of most often is this idea that you and I can justify ourselves if we'll just keep the law. And so probably what most historians think is this was the early forms of Gnosticism that was taking root there. But I love what he says to Timothy is, hey, rather than address all these false ideas and go after the counterfeit stuff, preach the truth.
Yeah.
Preach those. If you preach the gospel, Timothy, guess what? People will be transformed from the inside out. And people that are transformed in their inner lives, they receive the love of God. They can't help but share it with others. And so at the end of the day, we will know that we have reached our goal if the people love one another because there's been the gospel preached. They've received it by faith. It's changing them. It's transforming them. They're expressing it in love. Things that the law can't do, because the antithesis of these, if you look at this, if you created an antithesis, so if you have love that's produced by the gospel coming in here, I should do it this way. Love, the gospel comes in, you have a good conscience, you have pure heart, a sincere faith. If you add the law apart from the gospel, it's the opposite, right? All the law can lead you and I to do is not have a good conscience, but a guilty conscience. Yeah. All the law can lead us to do is show the impurity of our hearts. It doesn't give us a pure heart. All the law can do, if we use it to justify ourselves, is lead to dead works and not a sincere faith. Here's the question I love to ask the young pastors I get to spend time with. I'll ask you the same. You're going to know the right answer because you know all things. What is the opposite biblically of love? And include, it's not hate. What would you say is the opposite, the antonym?
Yeah. So honestly, I would have missed, but I think I've heard you talk about this, so I'm ready for the test because I got a preview. Fear. Right.
1 John 4, right? Yeah. Perfect love casts out what? Fear. So here's one way to think through this. If you want to do a deep dive analysis of your people and where they're at, do you lead a culture that's characterized by love? These people love each other. Not perfect, but man, they love each other. Or are you leading a church that's characterized by a culture of fear? If it's a fear-based culture, somewhere either the gospel's not being preached or it's not being practiced. And that's what I've seen over and over again when I visit churches. I know you and I've had opportunity at times to come alongside churches that need help. What you can see usually on the staff beginning there, but extending to leadership, is this fear. I'm one mistake away from losing my head here. And you begin to realize, wow, this is not a culture of love. This is a culture of fear, which means if we traverse upstream and we climb the mountain to get to the headwaters, probably what's going into that is either practicing the law, preaching the law in the wrong way, not preaching the gospel, or not practicing the gospel.
So good. So good. Yeah. You can walk into an organization, you can walk into a church, and you can tell that, it's an either or. Is it love or fear? That's the key driver here, and it changes everything. It changes everything, and you can get results. You can get people to perform. You can, if leadership, there is an aspect. You're trying to get people to do something they wouldn't do in and of themselves. Right. There's influence in leadership. So now you got to figure out how to pull that off. And, and you got to decide, are you going to motivate out of love or out of fear? And there is an inherent, I think this might be part of it. It's funny how the mind works. What you recall, I heard Chuck Swindoll say probably 35 years ago. He said, hey, if you're preaching you're not preaching grace and the gospel correctly if people aren't abusing it. So fear, you can kind of get a 100% lockstep adherence to whatever it is. And if you give grace and love, you might not.
Yeah, so good.
It's a little messier.
It's messier
on the front end. People will abuse grace. They always have. And yet, it's the model of God. God could have only related to us out of a spirit of fear, or only legalism or anything like that. I'm reading, I'm not ADD, but I'm looking at this passage. I want us to talk about 100 different things. This is before Christmas, recording this before Christmas. I'm reading On the Incarnation by Athanasius. It's a great read before, we talked about that on the podcast, great read before Christmas. And the thing I'm struck by this time is, so Athanasius so we're now in the 300s. This is before Nicaea, and he's writing to someone. I think is a context of that. That's what he would say is a context of that book. He's writing to someone, a recent convert, to explain why the incarnation matters. And so he talks about all the things that you would expect them to talk about, more the Easter component of the incarnation. Hey, there's a debt that's owed to God by man, so we haven't have a perfect man. So he talks about that, a Romans 5 kind of thing. But he just kind of makes this argument there. But why would God do that?
Yeah.
Like why? So we talk about that he has. We talk about oftentimes what it's meant to us. But like, why? God gave us our shot. We blew it. And he did come, but why? And he just basically makes the argument, like the only reason, the only explainable reason that Jesus Christ would come in the form of a man, be incarnate, is love. That's it. There's no other logical explanation, because he didn't need anything from us. He didn't owe anything to us. He must really love us. And now here's the demonstration of that. And I think as a leader, I think as a pastor, to love one another as he has loved us, you start with love. And David, it's just a really good kind of question. Hey, is what's downstream? Is that coming from love, or is that coming from fear? And it makes me want to, stand in front of the next group that I lead or that I shepherd or pastor, and just kind of, before we even get to the thing, look at them and go, not how many people are in the room, because that's not that's not how I'd measure success.
No.
But man, do they love each other? And are they doing so more and more because of my life and my leadership? Or are they running around out of fear, whacking each other, trying to get them to, live out the law in some way? Fearful that they are going to, straining kind of gnats. Don't do this. Don't say this. Or is there's this back to verse 2? Is there's this grace? Is there this mercy? A lot of it. So obviously that's a work of God, but so much of it is going to come from these leaders. Paul's saying, watch out for these leaders. Here's what they're going to bring in. Timothy, you lead in a different way. And what an amazing metaphor, Dave. If you get this right at the headwaters, I think you're really going to like the stream in which you do ministry in. So,
and that's the good news, right? If you get down at the tailwaters and things don't look good, by the grace of God, you can always go back upstream and have impact.
Always go back up.
Here's what I've noticed in my experience, and it was true of me personally. Fearful leaders produce fearful followers. Loving leaders produce loving followers. And so what I learned about myself through the pastoral epistles was, and I know we hinted at this in the previous episode, I wasn't receiving the grace of God myself. I was working out of insecurity and fear and this thought of, privately, I know I'm not what these people need, but if I can fake it and if I can do more and try harder, somehow they'll be deceived. And it does. It creates a culture of insecurity and instability and fear. And it took a while to begin to prioritize. That means I've got to take the gospel in every day. Mm-hmm. I got to remember the way that I relate to God and appropriate it for myself. It can't be about everybody else but me. It's got to be first about me, then everybody else. And from that place, things do change. And so, I can tell you that I've been a part of fearful church cultures, and I can always trace them back to a point leader that's incredibly fearful and controlling and domineering. Because even if the gospel is preached, the gospel wasn't practiced, and it's confusing to people. They hear one thing up front, but then in the community they experience something entirely different. And it's the risk in that is they throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure. They reject that which is true based on the way it's practiced in the lives of people, and this culture of fear does so much damage.
Yeah. Dave, the wise pastor leader, older, wiser pastor leader,
much older.
What is it like when you're leading out of fear? So if I'm, I was in your congregations along the way, how would I experience you leading out of fear, and then, or contrast, out of love? But like, what does that look like when you're in practice? How did you relate to your people when fear was kind of the dominating motivation?
Yeah, there was a lot of, if you listen to my sermons then, there was a lot of do more, try harder.
It's good.
And it doesn't mean that, we embrace the third use of the law here, which means the Bible, the law does have a point. We do need to learn how to please God and obey him, right? We want to do that, but we don't do that so that he will love us. We do that because he already does, right? And so that needs to be present. But I was a lot of do more, try harders, and then a lot of transition in leadership, and a lot of those private conversations where we can do better. I don't think you're capable. next person up. Let's go. And so that's really tough. Here's what I've seen. Every leader I've ever met, and even Christian I met that struggles with this, always does this thing where there's a dichotomy of truth and love. Truth and love become separated, and they will lean into, well, I'm just the truth guy, I like the truth. Or, hey, if we're speaking the truth in love, then we're on the truth side now and not on the love side. It's never the way the Bible speaks of it.
Yeah.
Jesus is the fullness of grace and truth. When we speak the truth in love, there never is the thought of, well, that's too much love and not enough truth, or that's too much truth. And so we do that thing. And what oftentimes I've seen fearful leaders lean heavy into the truth, almost can justify the fact they're not being loving, and that, hey, everybody needs to hear what I have to say. And so if you're that leader that's listening today, and you are, hey, I'm the truth guy and people don't love me and receive me well, and the people around me are afraid, you have a real problem according to 1 Timothy 5. Good news is today's the day you can repent. Today's the day you can change and seek. And I've seen people radically change too, John. I really have.
Boy, it's rare. I feel like where someone is marked by, a leadership that's based on fear, manipulation, coercion, guilt, shame. But that's a work of God. Can it be done? It has to. It has to be a possibility, right? Or the gospel is just ineffective. But friends, it'd be good to think about your own culture that you've created, because really, I think what's in front of you, you caused.
Yeah,
you just did.
It's the hard truth, but you're right.
And is it marked by love? Is it marked by joy, peace, or are people just scared? And I've seen people. I've seen organizations that have a sense of urgency, but it's only out of fear of getting in trouble, fear of not performing to the same level that everyone else is, and they'll be thought less of. And so you take these approval addicts and you just feed it, leverage it, withhold, any type of encouragement until people do something, and you can get results. You can. But 10, 20, 30 years of that, you won't. And it feels like it always it always crashes down.
We can maybe find that. If I can find this, maybe we can stick in the show notes. There was a conjoined study done, I think it's by the University of Chicago and Moody Bible, looking at leadership, and it's probably 20 years outdated. But what they found is people love fear-driven leaders up to 2 years. 3 years for 2 years, because they're effective, right? Fear is a short-term effective means of motivation. But what they found is the leaders they loved the most were the leaders that loved them back. And so those folks had longevity, but a fear-driven leader will last for 2 or 3 years. And I know ministries get in trouble sometimes, and churches can stagnate. And so we bring in a fear-driven leader, and everything goes really well till probably that third year, and then it all comes undone, because God loves his people profoundly enough to not let them live long-term in fear, and he'll do what he needs to do to bring things to repentance and change.
Always has.
Transformation.
Always has. Yeah. Yep. That's fast. I've probably said it 1,000 times. Hey, fear and guilt are an amazing short-term motivator. They really are. Like, if you want to do something quick, pull those two out of your bag of tricks and leverage them, because you can get the ball moving. You will just hate it later. You'll hate what you actually created and what you actually did. So statistic that shocks me zero. That there's stats so back. I mean, because I have just seen it, and I just pray. And I think early on I can remember, and I think it's interesting. Yes, there's a broken part of just lack of being transformed by God. But I think sometimes I was just so zealous to get results, as if somehow I'm a linchpin in all of this. That might be part of it, Dave, is like we think too highly of ourselves, that if we don't do this, like, it won't get done. God's plans are thwarted, all those kinds of things. Okay, so that being the case now, how can I get the thing? How can I get people? How can I get some traction on something? What's the best way to do that? Fear, guilt, shame. Hey, why weren't you there? You're not showing up at the same frequency. I don't think you're as invested as you used to be. We've got you in this leadership position, but you know what? If you don't want to be here, then we can pull you off. Or I'm always evaluating my team. So the many of those were not direct quotes, but it could be that type of thing, because I just was so zealous to believe that I played an important role. And I think maybe if I go, I'm just glad to be on the team. And I want to be as faithful as possible, but I'm increasingly not as confused about how important I am. And so therefore I don't have to manipulate others. I can just invite them in on my best days anyway. That's where I am.
Such freedom in that too. That's exciting.
Well,
and just spoiler alert, again, for the person out there that's listening, watching, struggling with this, that the light just went on like, oh no, I'm a fear-based leader. Here's what I would tell you in the form of an encouragement. As we get to chapter 4, Paul is going to get real specific with Timothy, and he has this kind of closing statement he makes in kind of a personal admonition of Timothy. And he says, watch your life and doctrine.
Yes.
And by so doing, you will save both yourself and your hearers. In other words, there's hope.
Yeah.
There's hope. How does it happen? Life and doctrine. It's preaching the gospel, believing the gospel. And from that place, transformation does happen. So that's the problem in Ephesus. The church is a mess. False teachers are infiltrated. And then Paul says to Timothy, hey, our goal at the end of the day is that they love one another. Here's what we need to do. We need to go back to faithfully preaching the gospel, knowing that as the people rightly receive it, it's going to transform them from the inside out, and they're going to love one another.
Okay. Bit of a lightning round here, Dave. Meaningless talk, genealogies, speculations, those kinds of things. What's analogous to today?
I do think there's so much theological speculation. So much of what I hear now, and I think I probably hear it because I don't do deep dives on these things. They're probably sound bites on social media, which is probably the wrong way to evaluate whoever's speaking. It's usually the most charged thing you have to say. There's a lot of speculative theology today. Like, well, maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. Maybe you're just making things up now, whether that's in the spiritual realm, whether that's where we are in the course of history right now, right here, whether that's arguing over things that the church historically said those are secondary matters or even tertiary matters. So much can be put in the category. I think we're just making things up a little bit now. We're speculating. They may or may not be true. That's what speculation means. Where again, Paul goes back to, hey, Timothy, you've received the treasure of the gospel. Steward it like you would the richest man in the world. Be a good steward of the resources you receive. Speak about the things most powerfully that you know most to be true that have been revealed by God. So I do think there's a lot of speculation in the realm of politics and history and morality and all kinds of things, right, that are happening now, John. And it's just, I look at it and I even watch what pains me, and maybe this is how I become an old man overnight, is to watch the family of faith fighting in front of unbelievers and over speculative things like, what are we doing here? Like, what's this about?
Well, I was thinking about, so yes, I think we've talked about this before, but you want to focus on kind of these essentials, right? That we're just not going to be, or those things are not up for debate, and then we have these kind of convictions, and then we have opinions, and then we have questions. And a lot of times we spend so much of our time and energy in these, esoteric kind of questions that maybe people weren't asking, but we've got we've read a couple books or a couple podcasts, or listened to a couple podcasts, and we were going to string together something really interesting and fascinating that people haven't heard. I thought about, I'm just a tad old, or tad, I guess I was too young then to remember the fascination with end times. Kind of like, and how so much time was spent. You had to have a chart on when Jesus was coming back, and rapture, no rapture, and millennial view and things. And it was just like this myopic view on that topic. That's easy to spot, back then I'm like, oh my gosh, we should probably still occasionally should preach the gospel. That's interesting. Talk about it once a year, but it was just this hyper fascination about it. And that was like, it became dividing lines. Do you believe this? Do you believe that? When is he coming back? What's your millennial view? And I'm not exactly sure. That would just something be good for you to think about, as you're listening. What is it that I'm spending an inordinate time that's not just kind of core to the Christian faith? And I think we can be honest as leaders. There's sometimes a fatigue of a long obedience in the same direction, just reminding yourself and reminding your people of the same things over and over and over and over and over again. Vince Lombardi, this is a football, just starting there. And we can kind of get fatigued, and we go chase down some interesting rabbits. And I would encourage you that some of that actually can be fine. Hey, it's something I'm wondering, something I'm thinking about. But anyway, here we are today. Let's look back here. This is what's core. This is what's central. So I think we're guilty of that, probably in ways that'll be easier to understand in the next 10 to 20 years. We'll throw rocks like I'm throwing at the guys back in the 60s and 70s. So can I end? Do you have any? I've got how I want to end. Did you have anything else you want to add here?
No.
Okay.
You go for it.
So we blitzed by this one word in NIV. Paul says to Timothy, "Hey, as I urged you when I went to Macedonia, stay."
Yeah.
Timothy, stay there in Ephesus. And how was it rendered in?
Just remain. Same concept. Yeah.
Stay. Remain.
So powerful, huh?
Yeah, it just got me, man. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting that he said, like, hey, this isn't the first time I'm telling you this. I brought this up in Macedonia. So what you're going to see in Timothy is really interesting. And I relate to him personally. He's timid at times. He doesn't step up and be strong where he needs to be, but he gets out of his lane. Paul has to tell him, hey, this is who you're, the Bible guy there, do that. And so I'm wondering if he's not like ready to go hit the road and move on to the next assignment.
Yeah, something new.
But it's clear if you put that verse together with verse 5 and the aim of our charge, he's saying, hey, stay till the job is done.
Yeah.
Stay. I know it's hard. You need mercy, as a matter of fact, in order to make it. But it's hard. It's difficult. And I think this is so important. John and White strikes a chord in all of us. I think the default mode of the pastoral heart is to give up before it's over, like give up too soon, to quit prematurely. And I do think we need to stay. The task isn't done yet. It's not finished. And it may take us our whole lives. But the idea is stay where you are, and you'll know when you're free to go when most times the job is done. And how do I know when the job's done? People love one another because they've been changed from the inside out by the gospel.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I've read, I love reading church history, and I was reading through several just kind of preachers from the 17 and 1800s, and I was struck by how they just started a ministry and they died there.
Yeah.
There was no ladder to climb. They just stayed there, and they, in many respects, grew up with the congregation that they led. They weren't chasing something, that now is there's just such a propensity with social media to go, oh my, that sounds more exciting. That sounds bigger. I could have more influence. Those kinds of things. It was just kind of, in many respects, off the table. And church history rises and falls, and people are, we've got bright spots and low spots. But there was something about a leader, a pastor with these people over decades. I knew you and your younger brother, and now they have kids. And I remember your parents, and we dealt with this issue. And this has always been kind of a thing with you. This has been your besetting sin, and you've watched me repent of. You can trust me. You know that I'm following Christ because there's a trajectory where I'm walking with Jesus, and that there's just a richness and a health. And listen, some of us should go. Paul's sending people all over the place all the time. There is movement. There is a push. But some of us just need to stay.
Yeah, some of us just need to be right there.
We just need to stay.
Well, John, here's probably my. You and I met with those younger leaders, and we've had a lot of chances to do that over the last couple of years. My fear for them is the context in which they're doing ministry, which I think a lot of them tend to think of ministry by social media. It's arm's length.
Yep.
It's, hey, I'm going to put out some content today. And there is some aspect of it that is pastoral, right? Here's how we should think about this current event. Here's a way to live your life. That's good. But the danger in social media driven pastoral ministry is because it's arm's length, you don't get the front row seat at the life transformation that's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And that's going to make the fruit of your ministry less rewarding because you're not seeing it. And it's going to make the criticism you receive twice as painful because it's going to come at you unfiltered, right? Mm-hmm. People say things on social media they'd never say face to face. So I would really encourage, this is a stretch of what remain means. But if you take stay, remain, you go to 1 Peter 5, shepherd the flock of God among you. What Paul is going to say when he gets to Timothy in 5 is, hey, treat the older men in your church like a father, younger men like brothers, older women like like moms, and younger women. It's familial. And so I think there can be a renewal to the call of, be in relationship with your people. Don't miss out.
Yep.
You're the one they're going to miss out too if they have a pastor who keeps himself at arm's length through social media, but engage with the people because you really will have more joy, and even the pain you experience is going to be lessened by being with the people.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, and so to be clear, like we do need people that are preaching the gospel on social media.
Absolutely.
We need some people are adept at TikTok. However,
No doubt,
the
such opportunities.
unchanging plan has been the church and people who are gathering, who are practicing the one another's scriptures. That has not changed. That will not change. We don't know. Here we are at the end of 2025, and everyone's kind of losing their mind about AI. We have no idea, but I don't think it will change what the church is supposed to do. And there'll be different expressions of that. So, Dave, how about this? I just thought about this, and I didn't ask your permission ahead of time, but maybe on this idea of staying and closing this session. You shared with me a story one time, and maybe I shared it on the podcast, where you thought it was time to go.
Right. Yeah.
And others. So I'll tee it up that way.
Yeah. I was at a church that was elder led and already had the permission of my elders to pursue an opportunity elsewhere, and was at the final stages of that opportunity when I had one of the youngest elders, the newest elders, he was a young man too, come into my office and just say, "Brother, I don't think it's time for you to go. I think it'll cause damage." And I said to him, "Hey, we can't have this conversation in isolation. We need to bring it to the other guys." Yeah. And all of them, without batting an eye, agreed with him and said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm staying."
Would have been nice.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know earlier, but I'm staying because I'm not a free agent. I don't just operate independently. There is a sense of which I'm accountable to them, but there was work to be done still that I couldn't foresee. That was really important. As a matter of fact, it was some of the most important work I've ever been part of for my own soul and ministry that just wasn't done yet. So I'm so grateful that brother called me out. I'm so grateful that God gave me the grace to stay and that those men called me back, and we worked through some pretty amazing things.
So you're glad you stayed?
So glad I stayed.
Yeah. And, so I don't know why this one, that phrase caught my eye. Generally, anytime I've not moved around a lot. In fact, I've been here for a really, really long time, but there's been seasons. Of course, there's seasons where you just go, this is crazy, or I'm just, I could do other things. The phone rings, and I've been glad I've stayed. I've been glad I stayed here. I was glad I stayed, elsewhere. Can you stay too long? Sure. That's not most of our problem. Most people that are going to listen to this podcast, that's not their problem. They're going to be trying to get onward and upward further. But there's a richness, and Dave, that like, hey, I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I stayed.
The only time I can think of my ministry that I regret staying is when I allowed staying to violate my conscience, and we can talk about that another time. But that's probably one reason. Like, hey, this is not right. I shouldn't be here, and yet I am. And there's a lot of reasons why. That's all on me. That's not anybody else. But other than that, I think almost every other assignment I always wondered, did I stay long enough? Did I stay as long as I should have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I'm here until I hear otherwise. I'm just a servant trying to do the master's bidding, and he'll let me know if he wants me somewhere else. Then otherwise, I'm here. Go, I'll put head down here. So, Dave, thank you, brother. That was a great story to end. And so, friends, hey, may the goal of your instruction be love. And I think there's a few really good questions to ask yourself. And so again, we're just trying to give practical help from the scripture. If you want a deep dive on all the theology, all the Greek, that it's out there. There's just a couple guys just reflecting back on the scriptures in a way that I hope is helpful and is an encouragement to you. So as always, if we can help you, if there's things you want us to know, things you want us to talk about, topics to address, you can always reach us at clp@watermark.org, clp@watermark.org, and we'll talk to you again next time. Thanks.